There's a paste that costs $2 at any hardware store that permanently seals a leaking pipe in under 10 minutes. No soldering, no pipe replacement. No plumber standing in your kitchen charging $200 an hour for 15 minutes of work. A retired mechanical engineer in Texas used it on a copper supply line that had been weeping water behind his bathroom wall for 3 months. The joint had corroded through at the fitting threads. He dried the pipe, applied the paste with a cotton swab, and waited 8 minutes. That was 5 years ago. The pipe has never leaked again. The plumbing industry in the United States generates over $130 billion a year. Nearly 40% of residential service calls are for pipe leaks, joint failures, and fitting corrosion. Not burst pipes, not flood damage, simple, slow leaks at threaded connections and soldered joints. A $2 paste that seals those leaks permanently cannot be allowed inside the conversation, not in any plumber's training manual, not on any home improvement store recommendation card. Not in a single piece of advice from any licensed contractor who depends on your panic call at 11 p.m. on a Sunday night. This is the story of the cheapest plumbing fix in history and the $50 billion machine that made sure you never heard of it. In 1956, a materials chemist named Robert Hessler was working in an industrial coatings laboratory in Düsseldorf, Germany. His employer was a chemical manufacturing firm contracted by the West German Federal Railway to solve one specific problem. Pressurized steam lines on diesel locomotives were failing at threaded joints during extreme temperature cycling. Metal expands under heat and contracts under cold, and at threaded connections, that constant movement was creating microscopic gaps too small to see but large enough to leak pressurized steam at dangerous levels. Hessler's job was finding a compound that could fill those gaps permanently without interfering with the thread engagement or weakening the joint under pressure. After 14 months of testing resin formulations, Hessler discovered something that the plumbing supply industry has quietly used in industrial applications for over 60 years while keeping it completely off the consumer market radar. An anaerobic resin compound, a liquid that stays permanently liquid when exposed to air, but cures into a rock-hard polymer seal the instant it is trapped between two metal surfaces with no oxygen present. The chemistry is almost absurdly elegant. Apply it to a threaded pipe fitting. The moment you tighten the joint and cut off oxygen contact between the threads, the compound cures. It fills every microscopic gap in the thread pattern, it bonds to both metal surfaces simultaneously, and it never loosens, never shrinks, and never allows water or gas through the sealed connection again. The compound Hessler developed belongs to a chemical family called anaerobic adhesives, from the Greek word anaerobic, meaning without oxygen. The active molecules are methacrylate ester monomers suspended in a liquid carrier. In the presence of oxygen, a naturally occurring inhibitor in the formula prevents any polymerization from happening. The liquid stays liquid indefinitely on the shelf, in the bottle, or applied to an open surface. But when you trap that liquid between two metal surfaces and cut off its oxygen supply, the metal ions act as a catalyst. The methacrylate monomers begin cross-linking into a three-dimensional polymer network that fills every gap, every scratch, every microscopic void in the thread contact surface. The resulting seal is not a gasket sitting between two surfaces. It is a polymer matrix that has grown into the surface geometry of both metal pieces simultaneously. Pull strength tests conducted on standard 8/2-inch NPT threaded steel fittings sealed with anaerobic thread compound show failure loads exceeding 3,000 pounds per square inches, more than 10 times the operating pressure of any residential water supply line in the country. Your home water pressure runs between 40 and 80 pounds per square inches. This compound handles 3,000. And you can buy it at any hardware store, in the plumbing aisle, right next to the Teflon tape, for under $2 a tube. So why does every plumber you have ever called show up with a torch, solder, flux, and a $150 minimum service charge instead of a $2 tube of paste? The answer is sitting in plain sight inside the billing structure of every licensed plumbing contractor operating in North America today. A standard solder joint repair on a 1/2-inch copper supply line takes a licensed plumber between 25 and 45 minutes, including pipe preparation, flux application, torch heating, solder flow, and cooling time. At $85 to $150 per hour, that single joint repair runs between $65 and $120 in labor alone, before parts, before the service call fee, before anything. The same joint, sealed with anaerobic thread compound, takes 8 minutes and $0.30 worth of material. The plumbing licensing system in most U.S. states legally requires a licensed contractor for any work on pressurized supply lines inside a residence. That requirement was lobbied into existence over decades by industry trade organizations. It does not exist to protect you from a bad repair. It exists to protect a $130 billion industry from a $2 tube of paste. The three largest plumbing supply chains in North America stock anaerobic sealant compounds extensively in their commercial and industrial supply sections, sold to contractors and manufacturing facilities by the case. They simply never put it on the consumer shelf with a label that says, "Fix your leaking pipe yourself." A 2011 technical review published in the Journal of Pipe Systems Engineering tested anaerobic thread sealants against PTFE tape, that's Teflon tape, and traditional pipe dope compounds across 200 identical threaded steel joints under continuous water pressure cycling. Joints sealed with PTFE tape showed measurable seepage in 34% of connections after 500 pressure cycles, simulating 18 months of residential use. Joints sealed with traditional pipe dope showed seepage in 19% after the same cycle count. Joints sealed with anaerobic thread compound showed zero measurable seepage in 100% of connections through the complete 2,000 cycle test duration, equivalent to over 6 years of simulated residential pressure. Cycling, 0 failures. Every joint. 6 years of pressure cycling. $2 of material per connection. The review was cited in subsequent industrial piping research and completely ignored by every major plumbing trade, publication, and contractor training curriculum in North America. Here is exactly what to do. Go to any hardware store, Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, and walk to the plumbing aisle. Look for anaerobic pipe thread sealant or thread locking compound rated for plumbing and potable water. Brands like Rectorseal, Jet Lube, or the generic store brand will all work. The tube should cost between $1.50 and $4. Step 1. Shut off the water supply to the leaking pipe. Open a downstream faucet to drain pressure from the line. Dry the leaking joint completely with a clean rag and let it air dry for 5 minutes. Step 2. If the leak is at a threaded fitting, apply a thin, continuous bead of the anaerobic compound around the male threads of the fitting before assembly. If you are sealing an existing joint, you cannot disassemble. Apply the compound around the joint perimeter and allow capillary action to draw it into the thread gaps. Step 3. Tighten the fitting hand tight, then a quarter turn with a wrench. The compound needs metal-to-metal contact with no oxygen to cure. Do not over-tighten. Step 4. Leave the joint completely undisturbed for a minimum of 8 minutes at room temperature. Full cure to maximum pressure rating takes 24 hours, but initial handling strength develops in under 10 minutes for most formulations. Step 5. Restore water pressure slowly. Check the joint visually. No drip, no seep, no plumber, no $200 service call. Total cost under $4. Total time under 15 minutes including drying. A retired schoolteacher in Ohio noticed a slow drip at the shutoff valve under her kitchen sink in January 2022. 2 plumbers quoted her $180 and $240 respectively for the repair, both citing the need to replace the valve entirely and solder in a new fitting. She found a thread on a home repair forum describing this exact compound, bought a $2.49 tube at her local Ace Hardware, applied it to the valve packing nut threads on a Saturday morning. The drip stopped within 10 minutes. She posted a 2-year follow-up update, still sealed, total cost $2.49. The plumber's quote was $210. The plumbing industry did not lose this knowledge. They built their licensing requirements, their service call minimums, and their contractor training programs around a world where you do not have it. A leak is not a crisis. It is a gap in a threaded connection that measures in thousandths of an inch, and thousandths of an inch can be filled permanently with a compound that has existed commercially for 60 years. The $130 billion residential plumbing service industry depends on you believing that pressurized water is dangerous, that pipe work requires professional training, and that the torch, the solder, and the licensed contractor are the only path between a dripping joint and a dry floor. None of that is true for the majority of residential leak repairs. Not one word of it. Subscribe and share this with every homeowner you know who has been quoted hundreds of dollars for a repair that fits in a tube the size of a lip balm. The next vault opens soon, and what's inside will make this one look